She said, you want to see it? And I said, well, yeah, I do. And she unbuttons her shirt, takes it off, and she pulls it open, and I'm like, whoa. I go in for my annual OBGYN appointment. And that's when my doctor says to me, well, Kathy, I'm looking through here and I see you haven't had a mammogram in 3 years. And I said, oh, that can't possibly be right. I go every year. And sure enough, she sent her nurse to call down to radiology, and they came back and said, nope, it's been 3 years. So she tells her nurse, she said, go make her an appointment for a mammogram. And she looked at me and she said, and you, young lady, clear your calendar. I had the mammogram and I get the phone call and they want me to come back. And I'm like, okay, when? I'm thinking like next week or so. She said, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And I'm thinking, oh dear, okay. So I go back in tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and I go through a rigorous, talk about a mammogram. This was punch biopsy. This was lay on the table with your boob through a hole and the doctor's on this little cart underneath you. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever been through in my life. I left that appointment, which was about 2 hours long, feeling like I'd been beaten up. And then I waited for the results. And I didn't have to wait very long. The next day, I'm sitting in my car, and my phone rang, and I looked at it. It said Women's Wellness Center. And I thought, uh-oh. So I answered the phone, and I had my little notebook there and my pen, and she said, well, we have the results. Very no-nonsense. We have the results. You have ductal carcinoma in situ in your left breast and invasive ductal carcinoma in your right. And I sat there for a minute, and I didn't know what to say, and so I said, can you spell that for me? I hung up the phone from her, and I sat there and thought to myself, this is going to be the worst year of my life. We come from a relatively healthy family. My parents were still together and in their late 80s when this happened. Both of them very healthy. I was healthy, my sister, and so this was really quite a surprise. We didn't have a history of breast cancer in our family. I wasn't terrified of it. I just didn't know. And it's a hard thing to think that you've been healthy your whole life. I mean, I would never have known that I had it. And in fact, I was told by my doctor, she said, you wouldn't, even if you had done your breast exams, which I did somewhat irregularly, she said you wouldn't have felt a lump. This was not palpable. So I would not have, I didn't know. And it was odd to think that something's really terribly wrong with you and you don't feel bad and you don't see anything that's wrong. It's a very odd feeling, and I had a little emotional reaction to all of that. What I thought was going to be the worst year of my life, I began to realize about a few months in was probably going to be the best year of my life. When I was first diagnosed, before I went to surgery and I was still trying to figure everything out, I went to a conference with a number of women that I know from here in Dallas. And I shared that I had just been diagnosed with breast cancer, and several of those women very beautifully and graciously came up to me and said, you know, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I hadn't known that. I said to one in particular, I said, you know, I've learned about this nipple thing. I didn't realize that was going to happen. She said, oh, I've had all that reconstruction, and I've also had nipple reconstruction. She said, you want to see it? And I said, well, yeah, I do. So we're at a conference in a beautiful hotel. We go in the ladies' restroom, and she unbuttons her shirt, takes it off, and she pulls it open, and I'm like, whoa. I almost wanted to touch it. And I heard, and the door opened, And we both did like this, and this woman standing there as I'm about to touch her nipples, and she just slowly backed out of the room. And I looked at my friend, I said, uh-oh. Fortunately, she didn't tell the management. We put it all back together and went on down the road. But it was, despite that awkwardness, I had more conversations about nipples and boobs with complete strangers, in fact, with businessmen who everyone kind of wants to tell you their story or something that happened in their family or with their wife or with their mother or with their sister. And I realized that the breast cancer community was much larger than I ever imagined. And it's not just a woman's story. It's a story for men as well, brothers and husbands and children. And it's a frightening process, and it can be a painful process, and it can be at times lonely because you're the only one really doing it. But if you open yourself up to the gracious and loving care of others, it is a life-changing experience. When you're dealing with adversity like that, it's surprised me the level of love and support that I got. People showed up for me. So the night before, the radiologist or the anesthesiologist called me, which they do the night before surgery, and he goes, "Whoa, sounds like y'all are having a party." And I said, "Well, we kind of are." And he goes, "I think I'd like to come over." I said, "Come on." But it was an interesting evening, and a girlfriend gave me a T-shirt that I wore to surgery the next day, and it said, "Hell yes, they're fake. The real ones tried to kill me." I had a double mastectomy. I got to choose. I could have had a radiation in one breast, and but one had to be removed. And my point was I wanted the girls to be twins, so let's just take care of the whole thing all in one fell swoop, and I'm going to get my cute and perkies, and insurance is going to pay for it. So that was my approach. And I didn't want big Dallas boobs. Everybody here has those. I wanted Robin Wright in House of Cards. I wanted this elegant, lean, athletic look. So I wore my best Claire Underwood dress to my consultation, which I began to quickly learn in the medical community. A consultation is not a conversation. A consultation happens when he says, "Well, I see you're wearing a dress. I guess we'll just have to ask you to remove your dress." And I'm like, "What? Why?" He goes, "Well," he picks up a camera for the pictures. And I'm like, "What?" He said, "Yes." So I find myself standing in front of this blue sheet, and this young man is standing there with a camera, and I am practically buck naked wearing a pair of thong bikini panties. That's it. I was horrified, humiliated. And I said, he gets the camera up, and I said, "If you get one hair on my chin in that picture, I will haunt you for the rest of your career. You do know that." I think every woman has their own approach and what's important to them. And so it was important to me to try to at least have some sort of a normal, natural look. But the beauty of it is, once you have these implants, they're great. I mean, I haven't bought a bra in years. Don't plan to. I didn't see it as a journey. I didn't see it as I'm a cancer fighter, survivor, warrior. I didn't feel that way about it. I felt like, just get me out of bed and get me through tomorrow. And take the next day and do what they tell you to do. There's nothing that feels very, warrior-like about sitting in a chair and being plugged into chemotherapy. There's nothing very warrior-like laying in bed and not being able to get up and feeling so sick you couldn't move. And, there's nothing about that makes you feel like I fought and I won. I feel like I just got through each day and put that day behind me and go to the next day. And that's kind of the way I approached it. And frankly, that's the way kind of I approach life now, is don't worry too far down the line and don't look backward. Let's just deal with what we have to deal with today. And today's going to be okay. I was recently single when this happened, and which is why I think I had so much great support from my friends, because they knew I needed help, and they all showed up, and it was a very special time for me. And they wanted to fix me up. And so I began dating, and I've met some charming gentlemen, and I've made new friends. And in fact, I met the man I'm dating now, 5 years into this event. As life goes on, I'm sitting at a restaurant and I look across the room and I see this very handsome man, very young, and I kept kind of glancing that way, and then I looked over and he was gone, and I thought, well, shoot, that's too bad. And then I sense someone walking up behind me, and he stands right beside me, and I look up at him and he goes, "I have been staring at you all evening. You are so beautiful. I think you look like Princess Diana." And I'm like, best pickup line I've ever had in my life. So at that moment, I met Rodolfo, and Rodolfo and I have been dating for 2 years now. Rodolfo is considerably younger than I am, actually. He's 29, but he is, as he says, "I'm kind of an old soul, Kathy, and you're a very young soul." He's a good guy, and my friends like him a lot, and we've had a really good time together. He loves to travel, as do I, and so we travel frequently together. We just have a nice time together. It's a good mix for the two of us. Even if there's no breast cancer in your family, doesn't mean that you probably won't get it. Keep in mind that if you don't get your mammogram, you won't catch it early, because I couldn't have felt mine. I wouldn't have done a breast exam, which I did do. I wouldn't have known. Remember, don't wear a dress to your very first consultation. That's not a good idea. I learned a lot of things along the way, but mostly I learned that it's survivable. I just used to say, beam me up, Scotty, to next year. Just get me past this. And I got past it. And on the other side of it, there are niggling little things, but they're nothing compared to the friendships I developed through the course of this, and the care and love that I got through the course of this. And that's what I was willing to be open to, and that's what I would suggest for others, is to be open, because people do want to share, and they do want to care, and they do want to be a part of your life.